What's up, fight fans? Welcome to Fight Nerds. Tonight it is just Fight Nerd. I, Flyin Brian J, am by myself. Normally, Wesley Riddle from All That MMA is here with me, but I actually don't know why he can't make it tonight, but he said he couldn't make it until super late. And ordinarily, that would work for me. You know, I'm not an old guy that likes to go to bed early or anything like that. But this weekend is a very special weekend for me. And also, I've got some other kind of stuff that I'll get to in a second going on that is hindering me from staying up too late this evening. What I have going on tomorrow is that I have a work meeting. It's a work class. It's, continued education for my job that I have to go to tomorrow, and I have to get up and go at about 6 a.m. So I just can't stay up too late tonight to to accommodate Wesley so we could be here for Fight Nerds. Now, normally the podcast will happen in 3 sections. Last week we did it in 2 sections, which were Walk the Walk and All That MMA News. In the future, I'm going to go with, we're working on getting the name of the podcast turned into Fight Geeks, but I don't know if that will work out. And if it works out, we're going to name the first segment Geeked Out. And that's where we will kind of look in the rearview mirror at the last event or even anything in the news that caused us to geek out. And, we can talk about that and describe that a little bit. In the second segment, we'll always do Walk the Walk, which is where Wesley and I will say how far we would walk in order to be allowed to watch each and every fight on the upcoming UFC event. Last week, we walked 4.65 for myself, and Wesley walked 4.7 miles in order to be allowed to watch UFC 210. Wesley wanted me to tell you all out there that Wesley would walk 3.5 miles in order to be allowed to watch UFC on Fox 24, headlined by Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, shooting for his 10th consecutive title defense when he fights Wilson Hayes in the main event taking place in Kansas City, Missouri. Live and free on regular Fox, Big Fox. You can get the main card, at least, of that event with just some regular bunny ears. And now he actually didn't tell me this, but I think that a little bit of why he decided to reduce how far he would walk from UFC 210 to UFC on Fox is not necessarily that the card is not as exciting, because I think it is as exciting. It might be even better. And I saw him on Twitter say that he's more excited for UFC on Fox 24 than he was for 210. But the reason he's dialing it back a little bit is because of, last week we actually decided to go out and walk the distances that we said we would walk. And it was, 4.6 miles is not that much. I decided to run it, and it was more work than I thought I was going to have to put in effort for. It was a little more difficult than what I had anticipated. So for that reason, I think that Wesley's going to walk a little bit less. And I, too, would walk a little bit less this time just because I know exactly how much effort I have to put in to go that distance. But I do think that UFC on Fox 24 is more exciting than UFC 210. But speaking of UFC 210, I want to get into, first of all, what I have going on this weekend is I'm actually attending UFC on Fox 24. It's the first UFC event I've ever been to. I've been to 1 Bellator event and 5 RFA events, the Resurrection Fighting Alliance, because they actually started in my hometown. So I went to the first few there, and I went to one that was in Lincoln, which isn't too far away from my hometown. Now, this is my first UFC event ever, and my voice might not convey it exactly, but I'm fucking stoked about it. I'm super pumped. I've been preparing all week, making sure I've got enough pairs of underwear in my fucking suitcase, because I'm going to Kansas City and I'm staying on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'm leaving on Monday, so I'll be there for a while. This is something you should know, maybe you shouldn't know, but I'm going to let you know about myself, is I'm not a traveler. I don't do well with traveling. I have anxiety pretty severely, and traveling really gets to me, and so I don't do it very often. And also, up until like the last 2 years, I haven't had much money. I've been, kind of a poor fella, so I haven't been able to travel too much. But I am going to Kansas City. I'm spending a few days there. I'm going to see some sights. I'm going to eat some really fun food. And of course, the main reason I'm going is for UFC on Fox 24. I will get to my thoughts on that card and my level of excitement for each bout in a moment. But first of all, I want to introduce the new segment, which is Geeked Out, where, we look back at recent events and say something that made us, kind of get a little giddy. And my Geeked Out this is surprising to a lot of people. I've been thinking about it a lot, but I think I'm going with Cynthia Calvillo's grappling over Pearl Gonzalez on the main card pay-per-view portion of UFC 210. I was so flabbergasted and so like, had a heart on for what was happening in the octagon, with my chest heart, because the grappling exchanges that Cynthia Calvillo was throwing out were astonishing. They were so beautiful to watch. They were majestic and all that jazz. My favorite moment was when Pearl Gonzalez actually got Cynthia Calvillo mounted, and Cynthia went out the back door and then took Pearl's back. It was a beautiful display of grappling technique and a little bit of heart. You get put in the mount, a lot of people panic, but no, Pearl stayed calm, cool, collected, pulled off that majestic transition. And then also Pearl in her post-fight interview showing off just a ton of charisma, where she channeled her inner Nate Diaz, where she actually quoted Nate Diaz that she's not surprised, motherfuckers. Then she goes on, I can't remember exactly what else she said. She said something else that was pretty phenomenal as well. I can't remember, but she was cutting promos in there, all kinds of cool stuff. So I geeked out over Cynthia Calvillo last week. I think Wesley probably would geek out. I don't know what he would pick, but there are a few moments. You could geek out over Charles Oliveira throwing around Will Brooks like he was a child, things like that. I should have said it at the beginning of this episode of the podcast or of this video. I'm not shooting for an incredibly long video or podcast. Just wanted to get some thoughts out there, get some content to you guys. I didn't want the second week of Fight Nerds to be a bust. No podcast whatsoever. If it was another week, we could do it tomorrow night. We could do it last night, but this week has been crazy for me because I've been out of town taking classes for my day job, my real job. And of course, tomorrow night, I'm leaving directly from work at 5 p.m. and heading towards Kansas City. It's a 6-mile drive from where I'm, not 6 mile, that'd be real close, right? I could walk that shit. It's a 6-hour drive to Kansas City where our hotel is. And so, yeah, if I were to walk for this fight card, I think this time I would walk further than Wesley. I would guess I would walk 3.7 miles, even though like the first two, where there's a couple on the prelims that I wouldn't walk to my fucking beer fridge to watch, but I'm legitimately going to have to walk 2 miles to get to the event because my hotel is 2 miles away. And I figured, I can walk that in not that long at all. We're going to walk to the venue, the Sprint Center from the hotel. And then I'm probably going to get an Uber or a taxi or whatever to get back to my hotel after the fight card is over, because I love me some craft beer, and I'm going to drink some craft beer. Not as many as I would normally when I'm watching a card, because I want to make sure to remember every moment of this evening that I'm going to see on Saturday, because I don't plan to go to many UFC events after that, because I just think you see the event and you see the action better from the TV stream, because you can get really up close and you can hear the sounds of the slapping, I think, better. And, you can see all angles, and you can also have a more experienced commentator than myself, of course, in Joe Rogan and John Anik, Dominic Cruz, whatever, Brian Stan, John Anik, telling you, oh, you see what's going on, the subtle thing where he's got his wrist going on, he's got some wrist control and all that jazz. I just think that would be better than me just telling my girlfriend beside me, what action is happening that I can see from where I'm sitting. I actually got some pretty damn good seats. I think I could have sat up a couple more rows based on what I've heard from some of my followers on Twitter. They said I should have got like row 8, row 10. I decided to go with row 4, and like in the lowest section you can get before getting on the floor. I sat on the floor at one of the RFA events I went to. It was actually Gilbert Yvel versus Houston Alexander was the main event, and like it kind of sucked sitting below the cage. So I wanted to make sure to sit above the cage. And then I wanted to get, real good seats. I ended up with row 4. A little disappointed. I could have got 8, but hindsight's 20/20. I got what I got, and I'm gonna enjoy the event. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So let's talk about said event. Main event: Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson versus Wilson Hayes. I already gave a little bit of a breakdown on our MMA Mania's YouTube channel. You can check that out if you want to. Otherwise, I think Demetrius is going to win this fight, and the main reason, like I say in that video, is because Wilson is a lot slower than Demetrius, and Wilson has shown a couple of fights ago against Hector Sandoval just how slow he is. I mean, he's hits really hard, but his defensive striking and his own offensive striking, it's a lot slower than guys like Hector Sandoval. And they say that Demetrius is the fastest fighter in mixed martial arts. I don't see how Wilson really contends with that. Yes, Wilson is a powerful dude, but he, really got the better of Hector Hector's tiny, man. That guy's like a straw weight. Demetrius and Wilson are like the same size. I just don't see how Wilson, gets the better of Demetrius in the strength department or in the grappling department in general. So I think the speed advantage will be too much for Wilson here. I think that Demetrius is going to get a KO or TKO in round number 3. Something to note is that if we were talking about walk the walk, I wouldn't walk as far for this main event and than I would one of the later fights. And it's not that I don't think that Demetrius is a fucking incredibly exciting fighter. I love the middleweight division. It's my favorite division in mixed martial arts. I love Jacare Souza. Robert Whitaker is the guy that's coming up strong and heavy, and that's going to be a really exciting fight. And so I would walk further for that fight than I would for this fight to be allowed to watch it. But I do think this will be an exciting main event, and I don't get the hate on Demetrius Johnson. Speaking of hate on Demetrius Johnson, I'm going to flip that script and say that I really enjoy this man. I hear a lot of talk about how people are upset or they don't want him to break Anderson Silva's title defense record. And Anderson Silva's my favorite fighter. You probably know that by now. I'm fine with it. I really think that if anybody were to break this record this soon, I'm glad it's Demetrius Johnson and not somebody like John Jones, because Demetrius is a really respectful and respectable man. He's got a fun personality that I think is underappreciated. I think that his weight class is underappreciated because of how fucking dominant he is. I love his video game streams. I love that if you're a paid subscriber or a not paid subscriber, you can hop on there and ask him questions. One time I was watching Demetrius's live stream and he was drinking what looked like a beer. And I was like, hey, Demetrius, what are you drinking there? And he said, it was a mixture of Not Your Father's Root Beer, and I don't want to get this wrong, but I think Not Your Father's Root Beer and Mudslide or something like that. Hey, that's not the flavor of shit that I like, but I love that he was drinking some beers, and I love that he answered my question. I'd never popped into a live stream before, and he calls you out by name. You got a username on Twitch. He's like, hey, Flyin Brian J, thanks for joining the stream. It's Not Your Father's Root Beer and Mudslide, bro. I'm like, well, that's fucking cool. The #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world interacting with fight fans. And if you've watched Embedded, I love that some people watch his live streams when he's playing video games. They don't even know what UFC is. I mean, they're probably children. I don't know. But just his personality in general, it's a lot of fun. I think he's underappreciated. And I think that if anybody were to break Anderson Silva's record right now, I'm glad that it is Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. And a little bit of it, too, is because I've said it 100 times. I'm going to be there. So to experience that, I hope he does it. To experience that kind of history-making moment is going to be something that I'll probably remember forever if he pulls it off. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to that fight. I'm super excited about it. I get to see the most technical fighter in the world do the damn thing this coming Saturday. Pretty damn pumped about it. Moving down, co-main event, Thug Rose Namajunas. I heard she was going to get rid of that moniker. I'm really glad she didn't get rid of that moniker. But anyway, against Michelle, the karate hottie Watterson. I'm also super excited for this fight because this is definitely a #1 contender fight, right? So it's very, very meaningful. It's a super exciting fight in terms of stylistic matchup. Both girls are pretty good on the feet. Obviously Michelle is better on the feet than Thug Rose, I believe. And on the ground, I think that Thug Rose is better than Michelle. But both ladies, in their opponent's strength, they are really good in that area as well, just like one notch below their opponent. So I think we're going to see a really exciting and intriguing stylistic matchup. I personally think that Michelle Watterson is going to win this fight because she's better on the feet and she can, fight off submission attempts on the ground against Thug. I think that Michelle has a way better resume. I just think that Michelle gets it done, and I cannot believe that she is an underdog. Let's see if she's still, plus 113 on UFC's website, and Namajunas is -133. Really just believe that Michelle is the better fighter, and I think that she'll prove it on Saturday, and I think she'll get a title shot against either Joanna or Jessica Andrade. I believe Joanna wins that fight, and I think that Joanna also defeats Michelle Watterson. But why do we watch the fights? Because they're so fucking exciting, and anything can happen at any moment. GSP versus Matt Serra type of shit. You know, Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman won, even though I cried, literally cried. The moments like that are why we watch this fight card. And while neither of these ladies are a huge favorite or underdog, I'm just saying anything could happen, and I'm excited for that to go down. Speaking of pretty hefty, and how far would I walk for that fight? I don't know. I don't know. I'm literally going to walk 2 miles to the venue, and that should be enough for right now. Jacare Souza versus Robert Bobby Knuckles Whitaker. I'm not going to call him by his actual nickname. I listen to the Co-Main Event podcast. Love that show with Ben Folks and Chad Dundas. They call Robert Whitaker Bobby Knuckles, and I think that just is a cooler nickname than the Reaper. Like they say on their show, the Reaper seems like a created character, you know, randomized name type of thing. So Bobby Knuckles. Anyway, Jacare Souza. The odds have Jacare minus 240, comeback on Bobby Knuckles at plus 205. I like Ronaldo Jacare Souza. I think he's another guy that's unheralded. I think that he doesn't get enough credit. I think that he's an exciting fighter, and I have like a little bit of a love for these Brazilian fighters in the middleweight division. Obviously, Anderson Silva. I just think the age difference is going to be a huge factor in this fight. I think that Ronaldo is a little bit slow, and Robert is super fast. And then I don't have it pulled up in front of me. I should have looked prior to coming and talking to you guys. But I think that Ronaldo is 10 years older than Bobby Knuckles, and that's going to be a big deal. I don't think that Ronaldo should have taken this fight. I think that he should have, you know, taken a higher profile matchup, something like that. But I want to pick Ronaldo, or Ronaldo. Do they say Ronaldo? I think they do. Anyway, Jacare. I think Jacare gets knocked out by Bobby Knuckles, probably in round number 2. That's what I picked on Verdict MMA, the fun app to play along with. I'm really going to be cheering for Ronaldo. I'm going to be doing the gator chomp when he walks out to the octagon. I'm going to be cheering for Jacare. Just think that he gets defeated. Moving down, Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens versus Renato Moicano. Lil Heathen is going to knock him out, I believe. Even though Moicano has never been defeated, Jeremy Stevens is, gosh, he's 25-13. That's not a great record, but he just defeated Renan Barão not long ago, right? And this is definitely a step down. But again, we've got an aging fighter against the young up-and-comer. But I'm excited to watch this one because of the knockout potential from Jeremy Stevens. You know, I think that Renato could probably win a decision, but I'm hoping for that Jeremy Stevens knockout, and I'm hoping to see that live. Now, we're a little ways into this card here, and I want it to be known that – one sec. Yeah. What I'm drinking here is – it's a home brew. I'm calling it Big Lips. I meant for it to be a blonde, but as you can see if you're watching the video, it is a dark color. Not real dark, but it's pretty dark. It's got a little bit of an orange tint to it, but I was shooting for blonde IBU, for a blonde sweetness on the palate, but I want it to be hoppy smelling, but without the bitterness. I just used too dark of a malt in there, so it turned out like this. But calling it Big Lips, it is super, super delicious. Speaking of things that are delicious, Roy Nelson probably thinks a lot of things are delicious just based on looking at him. He fights Alexander Volkov, Drago, in the main event of the Fox prelims. And this is another one that I'm super pumped about. I've liked Roy Nelson since he was on the season of The Ultimate Fighter, where he put, oh my God, why am I blanking on this name so hard? I just was thinking about it earlier today too. Kimbo Slice, where he put Kimbo Slice in a crucifix mount, you know, and TKO'd him from that point. I've been a big country Roy Nelson fan ever since then. And that was before he developed that big old overhand right, and before he knew he could put anybody's lights out. But I've been a fan of his for a long time. He has a tough task against Alexander Volkov. Volkov has a 7-inch height advantage and an 8-inch reach advantage. It's going to be tough for Roy Nelson to get basically like that Team Alpha Male overhand right. It's going to be tough for him to put that on Alexander Volkov, even though some of Roy Nelson's best finishes ever are against tall guys with that overhand right. Perhaps he could land it here. Not going to count on it, though. I really hope I see it, but my gut says that Alexander Volkov is going to win a decision. How far would I walk? I'd walk a quarter mile for just to see the fight. I'd walk a half mile if I knew that Roy Nelson got a knockout. Moving down. Patrick Williams, I think he's an Oklahoma State All-American wrestler, versus Tom, I forgot how to say his last name, Dukin? Fuck, how do you say this guy's last name? Tom Dukin. Fuck, how am I blanking so hard? Anyway, Tom. This dude has Dukin. Tom Duqueño. God, fucking can't remember how to say this guy's last name. It's blanking so hard. Anyway, that guy has an enormous amount of hype coming in. Patrick Williams is, lower tier, middle of the road at best. Why I'm excited to watch this fight and why I would walk a quarter mile to watch it is that I want to see if Tom D. I want to see if his hype is really real. I want to see if this guy is as legit as they say. Bobby King Green versus Rashid Goritz Magomedov. I'm super excited for this one. I'd walk a quarter mile, basically because we're going to see a stand-up affair. There's not going to be any grappling in this one. There's not going to be any lay and pray going on here. These two are going to get out there. They're going to put on a motherfucking show. They're going to let their fists fly. They're going to get into a rock'em sock'em robots type of thing. They're going to do the damn thing. It's going to be exciting. At this point, I want to stop and talk a little bit about going to my first ever event. No, maybe not. Yeah, let's talk about it. Some of these fighters that we're going to be talking about soon, I've watched live already. They fought in Nebraska. Like Tim Elliott, I watched him knock out. I can't believe I've lost my mind. It's on the tip of my tongue. Who the fuck did Tim Elliott knock out in my hometown? Holy crap. Jens Pulver. How did I not know that? He taught MMA for a while in my hometown. Tim Elliott, I watched him knock out Jens Pulver at the very first event. That was in RFA's very first event in my hometown back in December 16th of 2011. I've watched him fight live. I've met him. I've shaken his hand. Pretty fun. I'm excited to watch him fight. I've also watched Anthony Lionheart Smith fight live a couple of times. I've watched Andrew Dirty Sanchez fight live at least once. I'm pretty sure I've seen Zach Cummins, but I've never seen him fight. What's really neat is that if you go to your first live high-level MMA event, whether or not the fighter wins or loses, the next time they fight, you will remember them more and be more excited to watch them in the future, just because you have this slight, I don't want to say emotional attachment, but you have, a little bit of an attachment to them. You attach them to a memory. So the next time they fight, you recall that time that you watched them live, and it makes it more special to watch them fight live on TV. So making these slightly favorites of yours fighters, it's important when you go to live events like this. And it's important to have a little background on the fighters when you go into it. And then when it's live and you get to see their walkouts and you get to see how the crowd reacts to them, and you get to see their fans walking around and experiencing the event as well, and the emotion that their fans go through. If you look at the fighter in the cage, they lose or something, you look at their fans in the arena wearing their shirts, and the fighter gets knocked out or something, you can see the heartbreak on their faces. Or if they win, you can see the elation, the jubilation that's maybe from the fighter's mother or something like that. It's just, it adds to the whole experience, and it's I'm super excited to witness some of that. And there's hometown fighters like Tim Elliott, like Jeremy Stevens a little bit. He's from not too far away. Zach Cummins is from Kansas City as well. Lionheart Smith is from Omaha, which isn't too far away. I can't remember where Dirty Sanchez is from, but just fun things like that make going to events more exciting than, I said earlier that watching on TV is better for the camera angles, for Joe Rogan talking you through the event and stuff. But you can't get things like I just mentioned watching it on TV. You can get a little bit of it, but you can't get a real sense of the emotion that goes into it. And a little bit, they don't often show the fighters walking past the media row, or they don't show. I was at the event that I was at where Andrew Sanchez beat up a local guy. It was Chitty Njokuani need a guy to the spine, and they had to take him out on a stretcher. Moments like that they're interesting, and it's fascinating to me to see those sides of the events rather than just the fights on TV where we cut to a fucking, I don't know, Toyota commercial or some shit like that. You actually see the heartbreak. You get to see a little bit of the brutality, which it's not fun to see, but it's fascinating to see a little bit of that side. Pull the curtain, drop that third wall and see the other side of things. That to me is fascinating. Anyway, I don't know if you care about any of that, but moving on, Lewis, the Last Samurai Smolka versus Tim Elliott, super exciting fight. Both these guys, win or lose, they don't have great records. Lewis Smolka, hasn't he lost 2 in a row, something like that? Tim Elliott is 2-5 in the UFC. He's 14-7 overall. But both guys bring exciting styles to these fights. Lewis Smolka's phenomenal on the ground. Tim Elliott, he just throws his inhibitions to the wind. He fights with reckless abandonment, doing cartwheels and like a goofy ass shit. It's just going to be a fucking exciting fight. Whether or not either of these guys will ever contend for the title again, which Tim Elliott was already there. Lewis was, on pace before losing to Brandon Moreno via guillotine choke. I think it's going to be a fucking exciting fight. Speaking of guys that could contend for belts, Aljamain the Funkmaster Sterling versus Augusto Tanquino Mendez. Now, speaking of things like being in the arena that you don't get to see on TV, a little bit of it you get to see on TV. I'm excited to see Sarah Longo. I'm excited to see those guys. I'm excited to see who's in Aljamain's corner. I'm excited to, see if Chris Weidman's there, if I get to, interact with any of these guys. I'm excited about that type of thing. It really does make me excited to be there. Call me fanboy, call me whatever you want. I like meeting these dudes. I'm a fan of the sport. Why did I start making videos? Why did I start podcasts about mixed martial arts? Is because I fucking love to watch fights. When I started being Flyin Brian, I would talk to my girlfriend every single day about fight news. And she was like, look, man, I get it. You love it. How about you start a blog or something and talk to somebody else about this shit? So, yeah, that's when I started my Twitter account. That's when I started doing a podcast, and things just escalated from there. I love the sport, and I felt like being Flyin Brian or being a member of the media, whatever, I could be more connected to the fights. I would be a part of it rather than a mere observer. So, again, call me a fanboy for being excited to see like the guys that aren't actually fighting, to see the not fight stuff, but I'm excited about it. And even though Chris Weidman is my nemesis because he, broke Anderson Silva's leg, because he knocked out Anderson Silva, I have a ton of respect for him. And I would tell him in person, it's not like it's a secret that, hey, I hold a little bit of dislike for you for killing my favorite fighter. I would tell him in person, like, hey, man, I was mad at you for knocking out Anderson Silva, but it's great to meet you. That type of thing, I'm rambling. It's all I do. Now, if we're talking about fights we would walk for, that Sterling versus Mendez. Oh, I forgot to talk about the fight. It's going to be a fun, exciting fight. Mendez in his last fight against Frankie Saenz showed off some really good striking ability. Funkmaster has some lengthy strikes. He's also really good on the ground. Augusto Tanquino, obviously super fucking good on the ground, right? This is going to be an exciting fight. I think that it's a super fun stylistic matchup. I have to give the advantage to Aljamain Sterling just because, I don't know, maybe he does have a 6-inch reach advantage. I think that he could hold his own in the grappling department, maybe keep Augusto at distance with some kicks and stuff. I have to give the edge to Aljamain, but I know I'm excited to see Sarah Longo, but the camp, right? Not doing great, not doing well at all. So maybe Aljamain Sterling kind of still falters, but I would walk, 0.15 of a mile to watch that fight. Now, if we're getting down to fights that I wouldn't walk at all to see, I wouldn't walk to watch Devin Clark versus Jake Collier. I wouldn't. Anthony Lionheart Smith versus Andrew Dirty Sanchez. I would walk if it was Anthony Smith versus somebody that isn't going to just take him down and lay on him, but that's what's going to happen here. Anthony Smith has next to no takedown defense. Maybe if he gets his back up against the cage, he can get those Travis Brown elbows on El Dirte. Perhaps that's something that could happen, but I really just think that Lionheart has no takedown defense, or at least minimal, and Andrew Sanchez, that's all he does. He is a ground and pounder. He's going to get you to the ground. He's going to El Dirte you. And that's where 15 minutes of the fight's going to be taking place. And I just can't get excited about that. Sure, that could be a ground and pound TKO, but stylistically, this matchup sucks. And it sucks for Lionheart. Lionheart's actually from my girlfriend's hometown, so that's, pretty neat there as well. Zach Cummins versus Nathan Coy. Soul Force? What a nickname, bro. Now, this is a fight that I'm a little bit excited about. I would walk 0.1 to 0.2 for this fight, mainly because I like Zach Cummins. He looks like such your plumber, this regular fucking dude. And then he's a pretty damn good fighter. Didn't he hold his own against Gunnar Nelson a little bit, right? He's a good fighter. He just has like that basic average Joe look about him, kind of like me. And he's a fun, exciting fighter. I think that he probably knocks out Nathan Coy. He has good enough grappling to keep Nathan Coy from doing what Andrew Sanchez is going to do to Anthony Smith to himself. So Nathan Coy, he's a bump and grinder. I think Cummings has good enough defensive wrestling to keep it on the feet. I think that he hits deceptively hard. Probably going to put a left hand because he's a southpaw on Nathan Coy's head and, drop him, take care of him, get him out of there. Not terribly excited to see it, but still a little bit because I think that Zach Cummings is a little bit unheralded. Now, first fight of the night, Ashley Evans Smith versus Ketlin Vieira. This is a fight I wouldn't walk my beer. I could almost touch my beer fridge from here, I wouldn't walk there to watch this fight. I'm going to watch it, obviously. Even if I was at home, I would watch this fight on Fight Pass. I'd be here with bells on, with drink in hand, watching this fucking fight. I'm not like one of the fight fans in Vegas where I'll show up for the last 4 fights of the night. No, I will be there. I can pick up my will call tickets. What is it? Excuse me. I got to take a drink quick. I can pick up my will call tickets, I think 2 hours before the doors open. Something like that. Whenever they open those motherfucking doors, I will be there and I'll be in my seat shortly thereafter. I'm not like one of those Vegas fans. I will be there the entire motherfucking time, soaking it in, taking pictures. I'm taking a camera. I'm going to be, taking pictures of the octagon to put as my Twitter header. I'll be doing all kinds of shit like that. Going to be exciting. This fight probably might be exciting. I don't know. I refuse to research it. But I'm going to be excited to be there. I'm going to be like super amped. It's going to be like a little kid in a candy store, like a first time UFC event person at a UFC event. That's what I'm going to be acting like. And I'm excited about it. So I will be there from the moment they open the doors, and I will stay there until they tell me to get out of there, basically. Until after the last interview. Who are the commentators? I forgot to look. Until the last, it's got to be Joe Rogan because he does Fox events, right? Or is it Big Brian Stan? Whatever it is, I will be there until they tell me to get out of my fucking seat and go home or whatever. Super excited about it. Next thing that we would do on the podcast is I would do a transition. Let me see if I can pull that up now. I pull up a transition. Next, let's move on to All That MMA. That's where I would pass it off to Wes, and he would give us 3 to 5 questions on recent MMA news. Now, for MMA news, I could give out. I don't believe there's anything too pertinent to talk about right now. The biggest piece of news, I guess, lately is that Rumble Johnson is filing an appeal at Daniel Cormier for Towelgate, and he wants 20% of Cormier's purse. He wants the fight turned into a no contest, I believe, and he wants Daniel Cormier stripped of his belt. I don't think you're going to win, Anthony Johnson. I think that it's a stupid thing to do. You say you're retired. I think it's mostly his management team that wants this to happen. You gave up in the fight. You had the worst fucking game plan of anybody in a title fight I've ever seen. Cormier deserves his belt. Now, Towelgate aside, Cormier deserves that belt. And I think the appeal's dumb. I'll read more about it and give you a more in-depth opinion on that later. Rumor mill. We could talk about some rumor mill stuff. Miesha Tate, supposedly, she had some nude photos leak on the internet. The fappening, whatever the fuck that is. I don't believe it, and that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I mean, it was rumored once before, Nothing ever materialized. I think that it's just a bunch of bullshit. I think that it's sites like Middle Easy. Now, I don't believe. Now, I like Middle Easy. One of my good friends writes for Middle Easy, but it's these. They're just driving up clicks, right? It's these. I think it's sites like that. They're just driving up clicks, and I don't actually believe that there are these photos out there. So, I think it's a little bit of clickbait. What other piece of news? Let me. I don't think there's. No, that's it. That's it. So that's all for the show. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for watching this video or listening to the podcast. Reminder, the podcast is available on, right now it's just available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and I'm working on getting it on Stitcher. So if you could subscribe to us there as well, I would really appreciate it. For right now, I'm going to get out of here. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you. Oh, programming notes. I'm not doing a pre or post fight. I'm not doing the preamble. I'm not doing the preamble, and I'm not doing the rearview mirror after or before UFC on Fox 24. Obviously, I'll be detained. I'll be there, and I won't be doing those things. Quickly, Aaron Snodgrass has a question. Will GSP get back into the ring? A, it's not a ring. It's a cage. B, yes, they're working on scheduling him to fight Michael the Count Bisping. What is it? Probably in July. So they're going to announce soon when that fight is happening, but obviously he is. He signed with the UFC. They're making a big deal about it. He will be back in the octagon probably in July, and he has a good chance of defeating Michael the Count Bisping for the middleweight championship of the world. But yes, once again, I'm out of here, guys. Thanks for watching. Namaste.